Good evening. The world today is facing global public health crisis, one that is redefining our relationship to government, educational institute, and even to each other. Since March of this year, a novel coronavirus has kept most of us contained in our homes. And that's what we are going to find out today in our first of series NGN Town Hall. Our topic today is how young people are dealing with COVID-19. I'm Sanjeev Tanna, founder and CEO of Next Generation Nations, NGN. The number of coronaviruses are still growing. As of today, May 1st, roughly 3.2 million people are affected globally. Around 230,000 people are confirmed death. In USA, roughly 1 million people are affected with around 62,000 confirmed deaths due to COVID-19. As per Human Rights Watch, more than 91% of the world's students are out of school due to school shutdown in at least 200 countries. So for many children, the COVID-19 crisis will mean limited or no education or failing further behind their friends. The COVID-19 crisis have exposed vast imbalance in public healthcare, internet access for children, and online learning. Many public schools, they still don't have online educations or don't have technology or equipment. Nearly half of the world does not have internet access. And that's what we're going to talk today on COVID-19 impact on youth. First, I'll introduce my co-host, and then we'll invite our guest, and later part, we'll invite audience. So joining me today, our two co-hosts, Shrutik and Evelyn. Shrutik, why don't we start with you, and then why don't you just introduce yourself, and then Evelyn, you can go next.
Hi, my name is Shrutik Kulkarni. I'm the NGN Youth National President, and I'm currently a sophomore in high school.
Hi everyone, my name is Evelyn. I am currently a third-year undergraduate student at UC Berkeley studying public health and global studies, and I am the president of United Nations Association of Berkeley. I'm super excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much. So why don't we introduce our guest one by one. Anisha Tekwani. Anisha is a privacy leader with risk management and security compliance expert. She is currently managing the global privacy practice at Oracle. Anisha has been serving the ISACA Silicon Valley community as a board member for the last 3 years. She's also a board member at Next Generation Nations. Anisha, welcome to the show. Next, Chris Norwood. Chris is a Stanford University IT system administrator, and he's also Milpita's Unified School Board of Trustee Vice President. Chris is also founder of Bay Area Tutoring Association. Chris, welcome to the show. Next, Mallory Rothstein. Mallory is a founder and chief learner at Learn What Matters. She's a speaker and youth transformation coach to inspire high schoolers to invest in their personal development. She's an administrator business partner with People Development at School. Mallory, welcome to the show. Next, Rashi Jindani. Rashi is CEO at Empowerly. Empowerly aims to equalize access to college and career guidance through technology and human insight. Rashi is passionate about teaching high schoolers financial literacy and college readiness. Now, besides inviting professionals, we also invited 2 high school students. Nyla is a junior from Milpitas High School. Nyla is a Black Student Union President, NAACP in San Jose Youth Chapter President, LCAP Student Representative, and Stanford SMASH Ambassador. Nyla is also founder of nonprofit My Roots Are Rich. Next, Araav Patel. Araav is an incoming freshman at UC Berkeley studying computer science. He's passionate about using computer science to make the world more equitable place. During COVID-19 shelter in place, Araav has made an application that allows community members to order basic necessity to the online delivery service Instacart. I want to welcome all of you. So why don't I just lead our conversation? Let me start with one question posing all of you. How COVID-19 is impacting your life? Anisha, you go first.
It's definitely changes that we have to make. Working from home is a new norm. So, sticking to your schedule and going through your daily lives. Also, just planning your basic necessities is something, you really have to plan for. And that's just a few of the areas. But in general, I think all your activities that really need to be planned and focused when you and you have to consider whether you're going to step out the door, and if you do, that you're planning that succinctly.
Very interesting stuff. So how about you, Chris? How has COVID-19 impacted your life?
Thank you. COVID-19 has impacted my life in a number of different ways. First of all, I'm a father, I'm a husband. I have both of my children now at home doing online learning, which is very interesting to watch them manage their schedule. A high school sophomore and a freshman in college. My daughter did not get a chance to finish her freshman year, so she's a little bit bummed about that. And then also my wife, she's downstairs working. And as far as me personally, it has allowed me to reflect on what's important as I look at what's going on around the globe. There are satellite images where you see the world is, cleaner than it's ever been. There are a lot of kids and parents that are getting to know each other all over again about going outside and just spending really quality family time. And being in the Silicon Valley, you very rarely get a chance to see those things. So it's allowing me to reflect on, where true values lie, and also determining how I can be the most productive that I can be during these difficult times.
Thank you, Chris. You brought up some great points about environmental impact and balancing family, now that being at home. Maybe Mallory, you can weigh in next.
Thanks so much for having me. So I live in the Bay Area, but I'm actually from New Jersey originally and have lived in New York for a little bit. So all of my family and close friends are back east, where unfortunately it's pretty much the worst in the US there, it has been. And my family had tons of weddings planned. My sister was supposed to graduate college. We were supposed to go to Italy. There were so many things planned for my family, and I'm in the Bay Area. I live alone right now, and so it's been me just having to kind of figure out how do I support my family and friends back home. A lot of people in my family lost their job too, and so even though I'm kind of okay because I'm by myself, I still have my job. I'm trying to be supportive to those back home. And also just for my apartment, I was never really home a lot. I'm someone that likes to work. I'm someone that likes to be outside. And so I don't have like kind of an ergonomic setup here. I really was never here a lot. So I've had to really kind of reflect on what is the best kind of work environment for me? What's the best learning environment for me? And kind of document all that and try to figure out how can I make this space that I have conducive to being able to work, which is I think what everyone is kind of doing right now, is self-reflecting a lot on who they are, how can they be productive in this time, and then be supportive as they can to other people. That's kind of been my world for a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I think something that we've kind of seen with our last three speakers is the common theme of just like how it's impacted everyone's lifestyle. So Rashi, could you touch on that a little bit from your perspective?
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think that it was 100% a huge change in a lot of ways. Like Mallory mentioned, I live in the Bay Area, but I was fortunate my family's in SoCal. So I actually drove down when this all started and got to come back and spend time. And this is the first time in years that my entire family has been in the same place, and we never thought that would happen again. So I do think that in that way we were fortunate. We are also fortunate that we have access to the necessary supplies that we need. We all were stocked up on all of the necessities like toilet paper thanks to Costco. So I definitely think that we were fortunate in that way. But we've been watching the news and really managing the situation. My grandparents are in India and they're older, so it's definitely scary to think about just the risk that it poses to them. And I also think working wise too, I was fortunate that we were able to work remotely, but I see a lot of people being impacted who can't go to work or are being forced to go to work and potentially put their health at risk. And that is very, very scary. I come from a family of doctors. So I hear about my relatives going out into the fields, my mom going out into the fields with very little equipment. And that's very scary because it really becomes real for you when you hear about your aunts and uncles and parents going out there and risking their lives. But I also appreciate everything they're doing. And I think that I think this is really showing us how we can come together and band together in the face of something that is unknown and scary.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. I definitely echo all those sentiments. It has been an adjustment, managing your outer and inner circles, especially when not everyone is, you can keep in touch with everyone. I would love to hear from some of the students how they have had to cope as well, given the changes maybe. Araav, you can speak on that.
Yeah, so as a high school senior, many of my friends and myself included, we didn't know that our last day of high school would be March 13th. And I think many of my friends, including me, were really bummed out that we couldn't experience senior events like prom or graduation. We would either have to do that online or skip out completely. And with fall even being uncertain in the future and many of us going to college, it's a tough time for all of us because it's we don't know what's going to happen and everything's on an unknown. And on top of that, online learning has definitely been tough. It's hard to connect with our teachers and our classmates through online learning. And even though our teachers are doing their best to make sure that we get the same amount of education as before, it's still hard on everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of touching on that, reflecting on high school progress on that, as Nyla is our other high school student, and I know she's very involved in activism and all of those very important causes that help you kind of find your way while you're kind of being a high schooler. So now, could you kind of touch on how not only COVID-19 has impacted your life, but the things that you're passionate about, stuff like that?
Yes, so COVID-19 has greatly impacted me and my family, but also so many young people. So a lot of my family members are also nurses, and they're not able to watch their kids, their young kids that they have. And so right now they're having to choose between going to work and finding someone who could watch their kid. But right now it's really hard for people to watch their kids because oh wait, we can't have babysitters and things like that. So I think it has a lot of people in a tough place. For me, myself, I'm the youngest girl of 6 siblings. So everyone's been flying back home from college, and it's so weird having everyone back in the house. It's just super loud. And they're doing their college courses online while I'm doing my high school homework, and this online schooling can be really complicated at times. And we've had times where the Wi-Fi wasn't working, and then life kind of stops because that's what we're so reliant on. And I remember when I realized that, I was there's some people who really don't have any internet access. And I had this one day where it wasn't working. I felt like life stopped. So I've just been trying really hard to, help others who are in need right now through the African American Community Service Association. They're donating a lot of goods and textbooks and books and things like that. So it really inspired me to try, out of my best abilities, to start reading to children online and posting videos and just, it's helping myself stay sane right now because with every day that gets longer and longer, I'm kind of hey, what can I do now? So I've been taking all my boredness and making it into productivity and trying to inspire others to do that along with me. So.
Hey, Shrutik and Evelyn, if I may ask, can you guys share both of your experience? Because Shrutik, you are in high school, and Evelyn, you are in college. So we'd love to know how COVID-19 has impacted your life.
Yeah, definitely. I could go ahead and start. It's been an adjustment. I think there's a lot of uncertainties regarding housing. Unfortunately, I do not live on college campus housing. I have a separate apartment. So the majority of my burden has been trying to figure out what to do with my lease now that I went home to be with my family. But I know that I feel very fortunate because there's been a lot of support from my classes and my professors, but in such a big campus, I know that hasn't been the response throughout every department. So I think it's just really difficult time to navigate because there are so many mixed components and everyone's doing the best that they can given the circumstances. I just think it's hard to have one universal solution to everything, but having support groups and being able to talk to my peers about, hey, what are you doing? Do you have any resources? Kind of things like that have been really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like how Nyla and Araav mentioned, how I'm just completely dependent on the internet to, get my stuff done, right? Internet for me has just been a lot slower lately. There's been multiple times today in which I actually had to restart my router just to get like an extra 5 minutes of internet time. But yeah, I think generally online learning, at least in my district, kind of hasn't really been handled well, because a lot of times it's just teachers assigning work, and for important classes such as like AP World History, where I have my AP test coming up in literally 20 days, my AP World teacher hasn't been very like, due to these constraints, it's hard to like give feedback on like important steps or important like things I need to know on how to like become a better student, especially with these like important events coming up. So generally, I think I have a very similar experience to our high school speakers, in the sense that, you know, it sucks to not be able to see my friends. It sucks I'm so dependent on the internet. But, you know, I mean, we're all going through the same struggle, right? So.
Yeah. So from my side, I don't know, how do I say? First of all, daily when I look at the news and I see the number of people are increasing, that pain, when I see some of the family members are going through, or the victims or survivor, I don't like the word victim, but let's say survivor of this COVID-19, it's heartbreaking. It just, it's still, I cannot comprehend that we are in 21st century and we are the most powerful country in this nation, and how can like we have this many people dying, especially in the USA. So that's something I do watch quite a bit of TV, at least 1 or 2 hours a day. But as far as my business, nonprofit, NGN, I think we are more busy this time. I was very surprised that, because more and more students are attracted to NGN as a corporation, what we do. I think students have realized that NGN, a corporation itself, it's a youth organization, and this is where we are getting a lot of inquiry from all over the different states of USA and outside USA also. But pretty much that's, again, so on one side, I'm very saddened by what's happening right now. I'm more concerned, which I talk with my wife, that what's going to happen next. Let's say we will survive this shelter in, but that's not going to happen forever. We have to go out. So, and I'm with my 8-year son, you know, it's I mean, for him, he's still asking me when his spring break is going to start and when his summer vacation is going to start. I said, what are you talking, man? And then I'm missing my barber. I need to do a haircut. But yeah, I think it's a situation we are in right now, and I salute all of you. I admire that all of you are hanging there, all your friends and family, and like I said, that in this grave situation, people who are really frontliners, frontline people, nurses, doctors, the law enforcement, I think those are the people I think NGO would like to work. I mean, our next town hall will be towards that. So with that, I'm going to ask Shrutik and Evelyn to take it here to start talking about with our guest, whatever the question you have it.
Right. So I think something that we've all kind of touched on also when we were doing our quick little introductions is how we've also faced different sort of inconveniences in life as a result of this pandemic, the sort of worry that we have to face. However, some states may not share those sentiments. As a citizen, we have the responsibility to prevent the spread of COVID-19 due to the harmful nature of it. However, the states of Montana, Colorado, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia, and South Carolina have all partially, if not fully, reopened by now. Can our audience member please turn off his video? Thank you. Do you think that it is too soon to reopen, or is a slow reopening of the states necessary in order to prevent permanent or social damage? Anyone can jump in if they'd like to begin.
Yeah, that's a great question. My first thought is, in terms of looking at this from a global perspective, is that the world is driven by a number of different types of economies. And as we can see now, what's happening to those that are not a part of the gig economy or do not have positions like many of us have, that they're really suffering. And so those economies that have the front, besides the front line or the essential workers, the basic day-to-day necessities, those are the economies that we have to find a way to start to rejuvenate, because otherwise, you know, there'll be health issues, trauma, stress, and just a number of things. I mean, you can watch the news all the time and you can hear about how the food chain or the food supply is possibly being affected. The health care supply is possibly being affected because there are a number of workers that are on the front lines or in essential roles in our economy that aren't working yet. So there has to be a strategy about how we start the economy up slowly in the areas where it's appropriate. I would probably say in highly densely populated areas, you have to be much more cautious. But in those more rural areas, you do have the opportunity to consider different strategies to move the economy forward.
I agree. And I think that we definitely need to be very cautious as we move forward, because we do see, like Christopher mentioned, there are, like, for example, food plants, meat plants, where some workers are becoming sick, and then that is going to be affecting the operations in these plants. And I think that we do need to be cautious as we move forward, keeping that in mind, to ensure that we are able to support the health of the workers. And I think that's why it's important, especially in highly dense areas, to be careful. I mean, if you think about it, opening up a place like New York City, which I recognize is definitely an extreme, but is so tough because you're going on the subway every day and it's hard to be able to maintain any type of distance. I remember when I lived in New York, it would have been impossible to maintain any type of distance, and it's so easy to be able to contract things without even knowing it. So I do think that people need to be very careful. I know that people want to reopen the economy quickly, but you really need to take a step back before you do it and build out the strategy like Christopher mentioned. Otherwise, you're going to be in the same place again, and the economy might suffer even more if we see this come back, whether it's in a couple weeks or a couple of months. And I think that's the biggest thing, is at the beginning of this, people didn't recognize it, nor did they create a smart strategy about it when it first started. And I remember seeing it come about in January, and I would speak up and people would tell me to calm down. And I think that's why it's so important to, in the future, be mindful of the fact that the strategy is going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I totally agree, because like I think opening up too early, it might cause more issues, and it might be better just to wait it out for a couple more weeks or a couple months and then reopen the economy, or reopen or let people go out. Because in the long term, if you reopen too soon, it just might cause more complications and might just prolong the period that COVID-19 will stay. So it just depends on the strategy, and I agree with what the speakers have said before, that it just depends. Have a good strategy at first and then go as it.
I also agree. I think right now when we're in these shelter-in-place orders, I think that we should be coming up with plans on what we're going to do once we are out, and how we can make it so that we're also safe when we do come out, and that we don't have to come back into another shelter-in-place. I think that's also really important to make sure we don't relapse and end up taking 10 steps back instead of going forward. So yeah, I agree with what everyone said.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The only thing I'll add is that it's really important that there is a now that we've gone through this, that there's a plan of what happens if this were to strike again. Like, I've heard some things that it might happen again in the fall or the winter. I've heard a thousand different, kids theories right now. So I think it's really important that people themselves just kind of plan for whenever reentry is, what would happen if this happened again? And not just relying on the economy and businesses, but our own personal selves. What would happen if this happened again, and how would you plan for that? And how would you potentially change things? So I think it's just really important to wait until people are kind of having those conversations with themselves, with health officials, to be able to answer that question, and then start thinking about allowing people to kind of live this new normal now.
I think I'd like to add one other point to the topic, because as Sanjeev had mentioned, I'm also the vice president of the Milpitas Unified School District. And one of the things that we're talking about is how to restart schools. Obviously, as all the students have said, that their senior years and freshman years and those that are college bound are really trying to figure out, what the future looks like for them and their education, because they've had plans and dreams. So some of the thoughts that we're thinking about is, how do we start school back in the fall? And everyone is talking about how different it's going to look. A combination of online, combination in person, some video recordings by the teachers, just a number of different things that the teachers are beginning to talk about. And you have to remember, we're talking all grade levels, K through 12 across the US. And the majority of our teachers are traditionally in-person classroom teachers. So we're asking millions of teachers to reinvent themselves in a very, very short amount of time in order to continue their responsibilities to provide education to our children. So it's a very, very interesting time in that way also, as not only how do we restart the economy, but how do we restart education so that it's equitable for all. And that's one of the things that I know NGN really cares about, is about equity for all, especially when it comes to education for all. So that's a very interesting topic as well.
Just wanted to add to that. I remember when I was teaching, I was a first year teacher and had no education about teaching, and it was scary. So I can honestly, like, all props to the teachers that have been able to adjust to this. But when I taught at a Title I school, and one of the biggest problems I see with this situation is that a lot of those kids didn't have access to computers, and some of them only really had their phones to rely on. They used to go to their libraries, the Boys and Girls Clubs, to be able to use these devices, and those aren't open anymore. So it does really create a problem for those students who don't have access to the technology. And I think that that's a big thing that we really need to think about and focus on, especially as the world is changing and technology is becoming a bigger part of it.
Anisha, did you have anything else to add?
Chris and Rashi brought up some good points. I think one of the areas for me that would be of concern is this whole idea of, people or kids not having the technologies, and how do you fill that gap? Because there has been no time reaction as of now. And also households that may have multiple kids, right? They may not have the resources to adjust for 4 or 5 kids, or how many other kids they have versus the technology items that they may have.
Yeah, I think equity is a really big issue right now, and I would love to hear more from some of the speakers of maybe things that they have been doing either within their professional lives or just individually to kind of bridge some of those gaps that we've seen arise in our communities. Nyla touched upon some. I would love to start with you, Mallory, because I'd love to hear more about the Peace Over Panic Instagram Live that you've been doing.
Yeah, so I started this weekly Instagram Live series on Sundays. It's called Peace Over Panic. And the whole idea is to help youth find peace over panic during the pandemic. And so I bring on different guests, usually 3, that talk about how they themselves are trying to find peace over panic and some of the projects that maybe they're working on or their work. And I did this because I felt like everyone that I was speaking to, especially young people, was having a lot of mental health struggles. People were not liking what they were watching on the news or seeing on social media. And even myself, I had to get myself to start unfollowing certain accounts or not looking at certain times because I was just getting overconsumption of news that was negative. And so I thought, what can I do that I have control over to maybe help that? So I felt like if I started this series, that everyone that follows me or that hears about it knows for 1 hour a week that they at least have something that they can depend on that's positive. We still talk about how each of us are going through it. I usually have an intro about what I'm doing in the past week. And so for me, it's been really nice. I know that a lot of different teens that have watched have usually personally messaged me and said, something that they learned or they didn't know someone else was struggling with something the same way. And so that's just something that I felt like I could do that's in my control. And I tell a lot of young people right now, a lot of stuff is not in your control. So you need to focus on what is. And one of the suggestions I tell them is try to bring joy into the world in one way, whether that's writing handwritten letters to people, whether that's sending videos to people that that are frontline workers that you can make them smile, and kind of just trying to spread this joy even when it's really hard. And so that was kind of one of the things that I was doing, is focus on how can I bring joy back into the world again. I tell people everyone struggles. Even though I created this, I definitely struggled in my own way. But that was one of the things that I thought that might be kind of creative and nice to put out there for young people. So yeah, so that's one of the things.
Yeah, I think generally when you discuss these opportunities, and I think something that kind of interested me is when you said young people should focus on what they do have under their control, right? Because this is a very uncertain time, to put it. Well, I mean, yeah, so to put it that way, it's just a very uncertain and scary time because we don't. At least I can speak for myself. I don't really know like what's in my future. I don't know if school's ever going to start back up in the near future, something like that. So I think generally you hold these sessions in which students can tune in and take their mind off of things, kind of understand. And another person who holds maybe not the same style of sessions is Rashi on Empowerly. You guys hold webinars and events and stuff like that. So I think generally Empowerly is a very good resource for our students to access because they get advice and they try, and you guys kind of work towards making that uncertainty more certain. So I think the question that I'd kind of like to pose to you is how are these webinars and events going to be more tailored towards, I guess, more tailored considering the impacts of this pandemic?
That's a great question. I think that the first thing is honestly understanding what people are going through and what people need to hear and want to hear, because a lot of times we like to operate like blindly under our own assumptions. And so we did send out surveys to our customers and people in our system just asking, what is it that you want to learn more about? We've been talking to our counselors about it. And our goals are to really address what specific problems and issues certain populations are facing given the current situation, because it is different in the Bay Area, it's different in other parts of the United States, it's different in the East Coast, on the East Coast I should say, and it's different for different demographics and socioeconomic classes. So that's the first thing we want to do, is definitely tailor material to address what different types of people are going to and help them understand what they need to do to make the most out of the situation and just help them out honestly in any way we can. I love what you were talking about, Mallory. I think that's awesome that you're doing that. One other thing that we're doing is my team kind of came up with this idea that a lot of our students don't have extracurricular opportunities or the same amount as they used to. So we actually formed a team of our students to put together online entrepreneurial summit that's going to be happening in June. And it's a way for us to bring in speakers to educate the students about business concepts, and then also be able to pitch their ideas to judges online. So we really saw that like a lot of people didn't have these extracurriculars, and our background is in business and education. So we brought that together, and I really wanted to empower my students to take accountability and responsibility and ownership of this initiative. So it's full force, designed by the students, guided by the Empowerly team, and is going to be happening on June 18th. So I'm super excited about what they're going to put together there.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think something that was really interesting that you brought up was more of like the business sort of approach to how you're handling this pandemic. So that kind of just brings me to like my next question for Chris. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you also work with the Bay Area Tutoring Association, which has many different sponsors ranging from Google to the City of San Jose, Milpitas Unified School District, which you're also part of, and the Boys and Girls Club of Silicon Valley. So how do you think these sponsors, or what do you think the responsibility of sponsors when it comes to social pandemics and social pandemics and social crises such as these? What do you think the responsibilities of sponsors are to the companies that they choose to partner with?
Thank you, Shrutik, for the question. When it comes to, so San Jose is the 10th largest city in the US. So when our partnership with them, what they're focusing on are basically the essentials: food and shelter. How can we, the three pieces: food, shelter, and the healthcare, the pandemic that we're dealing with right now. They are looking at how can we get the homeless in places where they can be safe and secure. They're looking at, for those that have lost their jobs, how can we get them fed? And then they're also looking at, for those that are losing, that have on furloughs, how can they make agreements with renters or housing rental companies and so on and so forth, so they can give their tenants a stay. When it comes to Google as a partner, one of the things that Google is doing is that they recently supplied the California Department of Education over 170,000 Chromebooks, so that you talk about that equity access, that's what they're trying to do. Boys and Girls Club, what they're going to be able to do now that essential workers are going to be able to have daycare. On May 4th, daycares are going to be opening up with a 1-to-10 ratio. So Boys and Girls Club are going to be providing those types of services in after school programs. So instead of it being the traditional after school, right now they're going to be focusing on daycare for essential workers, because a large portion of their funding comes from the California Department of Education, and they're going to be funded through the rest of the school year. So now their workers are just waiting to get back to doing something. So as I look at each of the partners that we have, each of them plays a different role around education in one way or another. And so as we partner with them in our role as far as Bay Area Tutoring Association, the majority of our programs that we had were actually face-to-face. So we've made a 180-degree pivot to now providing services online. And there are a number of corporate folks that are working from home, a number of parents, a number of essential workers that are saying, I never planned on being a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. I can't wait to send my kid back to school to his teacher. So they're reaching out to us, one, to be trained on how to tutor online, but then also looking for students, like many of you yourselves, that can provide online tutoring for their children. Because there's a normalcy to education that has completely been disrupted. And for the high school students, it's okay because they're much more adaptable. But if you think about the elementary school students and the middle school students that are used to, for a certain time of year, going to school from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, this has really been traumatic. And the word is trauma. We are all going through some level of trauma in different ways, and working through that. That's the focus of what these partners that we have are doing. And again, I see the mission of what NGN is doing as well.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to all the speakers for those wonderful responses. I'd love to ask Anisha kind of how your role in global privacy practice at Oracle has shifted, or potentially what is being done to accommodate for some of the gaps that we have seen and some of the other speakers have touched upon.
Well, from specifically in my area, we I would say are sort of business as usual, but I do work for Oracle, and I know that, Oracle's involved in a lot of the, Oracle as well as another business unit called NetSuite is involved in a lot of a lot of these initiatives on, the AI behind how tracing is done, as well as the CDC is using some of the Oracle products to help support the pandemic. So there's various facets that Oracle's involved in. I know the Zoom technology has some Oracle pieces behind it as well, but specifically from my area, not directly, but yes, indirectly.
Yeah, thank you for touching upon that. I would love to hear from some of the students, their perspective. Maybe if Nyla or Araav can touch upon the projects that they both briefly mentioned in their bios, I would love to hear more about them.
Yeah, so I noticed my family and many of my community members, they struggle to place online delivery slots because delivery orders for the groceries and basic necessities, because much people can't go in person to stores like Costco or Walmart. They have to order online because they have elderly family members or family members with pre-existing medical conditions. So I noticed that a bunch of these families had to order online, and they struggle with it. Many had to sit in front of their laptop constantly searching for a delivery slot. There's a popular delivery service called Instacart. So I noticed many of my community members struggling to place an online delivery slot on Instacart. And many would have to wake up early in the morning to place a delivery order, or have to wake up or stay up late in the night. and I knew there was a better solution to this. So I basically created an application for Instacart that would run in the background to find a delivery slot for you. So users would be able to continue with their daily schedule, and they wouldn't have to worry about waking up in the morning or staying up late in the night just to order their basic necessities. And I made this open source so anyone can use this, anyone can like work with the code if they want to. And I upload it to GitHub for everyone to use and my community members to use. And everyone can find this with a quick Google search. You can type in like GitHub, Araav, Instacart, delivery slot finder, and you should be able to find it in the top search results. So far my application has like received positive response from the community. I've received over 6,000 views in the last 3 weeks, and I've also been featured in like local newspapers like East Bay Express and Tri-City Voice. And I hope this will help more people in the future and keep more people safe and indoors.
Thank you so much. What about you, Nyla?
Oh, so currently with my nonprofit, My Roots Are Rich, our project that we're beginning to help with this current COVID-19 relief is called Read for a Cause. And with Read for a Cause, we know, as Mr. Norwood was saying, a lot of elementary school students don't have the resources like high schoolers do. High schoolers were a lot more independent, while elementary students, I would say middle school and under, they currently need a teacher. They really rely on a teacher to really hold their hand right now because they're at that young age of learning. And so I realized that a lot of elementary school students, their families don't have the finances, resources, or really just time to just be that teacher for them. So right now with my nonprofit, with Read for a Cause, we have been reading books online. We've been recording ourselves, pre-recording videos, and posting them on the My Roots Are Rich's social media pages. And these books that we read, they're actually, I could give an example, are like I'm Enough. And they're all the books that we read are just super inspirational, and they really advocate for a lot of children of color. A lot of these illustrations are books where they could see themselves in it, and that's something that sadly is not too popularized right now. And it's really nice that a lot of children of color are able to see themselves in these books, and a lot of these books being read to them are by people that look like them as well. And a lot of great donations through the Milpitas Rotary. We've raised almost $1,000, and we're going to be using this money to buy more books and to donate books to children right now who don't, like I said, have the finances. And also a Black Education Network, ABEN, they donated almost 30 books towards us. And it's just been super great and super fun for us to do. We've had a lot of children do little reports on their book reads that they've had with us. One of the parents have reached out to me saying that they're English learners right now, and how since she couldn't read to her student correctly, as a teacher would in English, she was watching her book reads. And I think that was so inspiring for me to hear, because just to know that we're helping people has just been super fun for me to do, and it's been keeping me active. And right now our team is just growing immensely with a lot more people from all ages and all races just coming together. It's been really amazing.
I got one, I need to jump in one question. As per CDC, the effects of COVID-19 on health of racial and ethnic minority group is still emerging. So the early data from Midwest and South, it suggests that African-American people are contracting and dying more compared to others. We were talking about COVID-19. Louisiana just released a similar data. So this disease threatens all of us, but it looks like African-American community has seen the worst effects. Again, no proven data, but I hear a lot of news. But any insight from any of our guests on this matter, if you have experienced that, that some of your community members are impacted more than other community?
Yeah, I can actually speak on that myself. My great uncle actually just passed away in Louisiana, and that's actually where all my immediate family is from. And he passed away from the COVID-19. And my grandma, who's currently out there too right now, it's just, they're telling me just from FaceTime calls and just communicating with them that it's just really, really bad out there. And it really is because of underlying health conditions that they're exposed to in these communities. I mean, a lot of them have like lung problems and asthma because in Louisiana, there's so many factories that are built everywhere. And when I visit there, there's factories everywhere, which, I mean, it makes sense to why they're having these lung problems because of what's in their air. I mean, that's the best air there. They have to live there. So I think that for it to be affecting our community with this virus right now, it's really sad. But I think what we just really need to work on is just trying to be as healthy as we can be, take our vitamins and exercise, even though, you know, you could do inside exercise without going outside. And I think that's just what we really need to do. Yeah.
To complement what Nyla has commented on, in San Jose, yes, the numbers are proportionately, the number of African Americans or people from African ancestry that get sick are dying at a higher rate, but the majority of people in the city of San Jose are Latinx that are, and when you think about these two communities and you look at your data when it comes to academics, you realize that there are parallels. Not only are there issues of food security, but there are issues of food quality. And not only are there issues of food quality, there are issues of food consistency. So the phrase, you are what you eat, you know, where you live is going to determine your life expectancy. And you're seeing that show up here with COVID-19 in terms of just some of those factors being exacerbated, you know, due to this global health crisis. I'm sure that the data is similar in other third world countries where there are factories and where the food quality is happening, but America tends to use color lines as tools to motivate or agitate or to create divisiveness, because this isn't a Black issue or a white issue. It is an issue of the fact that there is disparities. There are atrocities that are going on, and how they are solved will take organizations like NGN and the next generation of leaders are looking at people as one, not through the lens of color. So yes, that data is there, but I would advise all of the young people that are involved in this discussion to never get caught in it's a Black or white issue or it's a ethnicity issue. It's a human issue.
Yeah,
and
true.
you will find that commonly across the world.
True, I agree.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also agree. And I actually was going to bring up the Latinx thing too, because I was reading articles that supported that as well. And I do think it's honestly a very unfortunate byproduct of the society that we live in, that this whole fast food culture has contributed to this, because that does lead to poor food quality. And I remember when I did teach a lot of students, and I had a diverse set of students that had white, Black, and Latinx students, and they often didn't get food at home, or if they did get food at home, it was normally fast foods, because that's what they would normally end up eating, whether it's because they felt like that was what they could afford or what they wanted to eat. And I think that's a big thing too, is this lack of nutrition, especially with the schools closed. A lot of students are seeing that they don't even have food at home. And when you're not being fed properly and you don't have the proper nutrients in your diet, it becomes even harder to build up the immune system to be able to fight the disease. And if you've been dealing with this for years now, then it becomes even worse. So I do think that this what's it called, the statement that it's making on like the food quality in our society and this obsession with poor quality food is huge, and I would love to see a change. I don't know if I will, but I would love to see a change in that.
Yeah, thank you to all the speakers for bringing this up. I'd love to just weigh in a little bit, because we talk about this as a public health student a lot. And I know that the media has briefly touched upon it, but I don't think that they ever really define it. So all of these things that we're talking about are called the social determinants of health. And it includes the conditions in which people born, they grow, they live, they work, they play in. And it includes a wide range of things from socioeconomic status, education, neighborhood safety, quality of food. And I think in our society, we have tended to rely mostly on physical health, like illness and things like that, to measure how healthy we are as a society. But this pandemic has really shifted the narrative onto what are the circumstances in which people are living in, because our education is being impacted. Folks who get their health through their education or school programs are being affected. You know, there's just a lot of interconnected between our society, and that is our health. Those are the foundations of our well-being. So I really appreciate how Nyla touched upon, you know, just hospital access is a huge issue in all of these, you know, communities of color. How are LGBTQ students or folks being impacted by, how is their health being impacted, on top of the fact that they're facing homophobia and, you know, unequal access to care? So I just really appreciate the conversations that y'all brought up, and I just love that we're having them, and that this, you know, if one thing we can take away from that pandemic is that we're starting to have these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think generally what I really like Chris's message of how this is a human issue. Generally, I think we all kind of can be trapped in our own like little bubble when it comes to issues like these. If I could be afforded just like a minute to share one of my personal stories. I've been working with the Oakland Unified School District for the past 3 years. In 8th grade is when I was first introduced to them. I went on a field trip as part of my leadership class to kind of understand like what our privilege meant and how our privilege impacted our lives, right? And something that I'll never forget is when I was visiting one of the classrooms, there was a little girl in the corner and she was extremely upset. And when, you know, little kids, they don't really have a filter at times, right? And so the teacher asked her, like, can you, I think, I thought this was a little insensitive, but the teacher asked her, like, if she could, like, stop crying, which is, you know, not a really good thing to say. But then and then the girl said, I don't know when my dad's coming home. And I don't want to make any assumptions at all, but, you know, when you have situations in families such as those in which you don't have that stable family figure and you don't have that stable family life, which is also something that Evelyn touched on, especially with the LGBTQ community and how they don't have a safe place to go. These issues are kind of brought to light. And I think generally something that we may need to focus on is, you know, these accesses and these issues of equality when it comes to these sort of poor infrastructures. So I'm sure we all have like a general understanding of how we stand using our privilege and using our position in society, how that benefits us. So something I'd like to ask everyone on our panel today is, how do we, given these circumstances, what have we kind of learned about these socioeconomic disparities and how they impact the more privileged compared to the less privileged? I think that's something that we should probably discuss.
I mean, I think you can see it right off the bat, where even just people, not just with racial, but in economic inequities, in terms of when the NBA players started testing positive and them getting access to tests right away, and kind of the world saying, how are these NBA players and people in power or privilege getting these tests right away? And how are people that have had symptoms for weeks? I know friends that couldn't get a test. And I think we're starting to see that, how people really in power and have money are able to get access to certain healthcare or different privileges because of that. And I think that's really being shown right now through the coronavirus, that, you know, a lot of people already kind of knew, but now it's really being kind of shown. I think the NBA was a huge kind of light on that. And that's what I've kind of really seen, is how can we make sure that people that actually need the test? I mean, I know for me personally, I was getting very upset when people were kind of like celebrities and different people were trying to be kind of nice and say, I got tested, but they were like, I didn't even show any symptoms, and they're getting these tests. And then again, there's people I would hear that are in these communities that really needed them, that were really sick, were not getting them. And so that's what I think we're seeing right now, is shining that light on that and how people in power and people who are wealthy can get access to things.
Yeah, so at this moment, I would like to introduce Dr. Dedhia. If you can show your video, please, or admin, can you bring her in? Okay. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so let me introduce Dr. Dedhia. So Dr. Dedhia, she's a renowned educationist and professor, and she's heading the Department of Textile and Fashion Technology, Nirmala Niketan College of Home Science from Mumbai, in India. Dr. Dedhia, welcome to NGN Town Hall.
Thank you very much.
So since you live in Mumbai, India, now India, when you talk about COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19 in India compared to rest of the country is less right now. And there could be many reasons, but where you live, Mumbai, India, COVID-19 is very much, there are many cases in COVID-19 in Mumbai. So the question for you is that how your students, how your teachers, they are dealing with COVID-19 in terms of their daily routine.
Good morning to, my morning, of course, your evening to all of you. I think that the COVID-19 has, of course, spread in Maharashtra, especially in Bombay, rampantly. There are several reasons for the same. However, as far as the students and the teachers are concerned, there has been education that is being imparted online by the teachers to the students, whether they are school students or college students. There is constant rapport between the teacher and student. That has made life different. There are many teachers who have also prepared videos to spread happiness, to spread togetherness, to spread warmth. And I will share later on with you the videos that the teachers have made, even at the school of Shishuan. Of course, at the college, there are words of happiness that are being shared. A lot of incidences where personal life is being shared by the student with the teachers. And I think that is where the difference is there. Because the students do not feel that they're alone. They feel that they have someone with them.
How is that online education works in your college and the school which you are engaged right now? Are students taking classes online? India, looking at I know that when it comes to the network connections, mobile technology is like 5 years ahead of most of the countries, most of the Asian countries, they rely on 5G, or not 5G, but I think the mobile infrastructure. But when it comes to the internet access and everything, do all your students have internet access, and are they taking online classes?
No, all students do not have internet access. That's the reality in Mumbai, because we have many students coming even from the very, very lower economic backgrounds, the underprivileged. So they are definitely the ones who do not have access. But I believe that education should not be differentiated. It should be provided. The ones who have the means will take it. And you cannot have 100% student body taking this online education. But there is a good amount of percentage. I would not know exactly the percentage, but there are good percentages. There are colleges which may have chunks of students taking the online education. So why would they be deprived just because there are other colleges who do not have it all or who have it partially? So there are institutions and teachers who are on their own using the learning platforms that are being provided to them. The Google Classroom, for example. There are many others like the EdFly Classroom, the learning management systems, or they're using the Zoom sessions, or they're using any other online processes. Even WhatsApp calling is being used. There are different ways in which students are being reached out. So there are ways in which online education is possible. If there is a will, there is always a way. And I think that although internet connection is low, sometimes even with the teacher, they make all attempts to reach out in whatever way they can. And there is a lot of content being exchanged. There are a lot of webinars being conducted, even for teacher training, as to how to conduct online training. Because India had always depended a lot on one-to-one classrooms. And honestly, we were not prepared with this kind of a sudden change. But I think India has adapted extremely well to this change, even in the field of education. And I think there is no option but to adapt to the change.
That's true. We were not prepared. I think I hear that a lot. I got one question for Chris. Since you are one of the board of trustee education, board of trustee at Milpitas Unified High School, now how your teachers and students are taking this COVID-19 impact? I understand that they are trying their best to work in online, but again, looking at the future, what's there in their mind? I mean, is that something they're optimistic that that online educations students can cope up and there won't be any impact in fall 2020? Is that something, what do you hear from teacher?
A lot. I hear that they're working twice as hard as they were before. I hear that the camaraderie of seeing their peers on a daily basis is affecting their social, emotional, mental health. Teachers are also parents, their siblings, their husbands and wives, and they have to do that and teach at the same time, all from their home. So they're overwhelmed. The most amazing thing to me was how much they miss the kids. I mean, not from teaching, just missing seeing them every day. And the teachers and the students miss the teachers. I mean, like, it's like family. And if you really reflect on how your kids treat teachers, my son and my daughter, when they were younger, they would come home and I would say something, and then they would say, "But my teacher said," when I'm the parent, but the teacher was the truth. The teacher was gospel, because they developed the relationship. And so the social interaction is, I didn't realize how much the social interaction was a part of the education system until this point, because our teachers are literally crying. We have in Milpitas, our teachers at schools have done drive-by through neighborhoods. 30, 40 teachers all meeting at the school in their cars, social distancing, with a map of how to drive through the community, and kids standing outside holding signs about missing their teachers, and we can't wait to give you a hug or get back together. So there's this humanness to education that is just relationship based on seeing one another that's just been stripped away. One of the speakers said, "I didn't realize my last day of school was going to be March 13th. I was like, wow, yeah, that really happened. Mm-hmm. So, but that's what we're seeing.
Dr. Dedhia, can you relate the same thing with your staff?
Yes, it is the same thing. Even here, the teachers are really missing the students. The students are really missing their peers, the teachers, the classroom environment. It is very difficult. I, as a teacher, also am in pain because of that. It is not the same when you're doing online and offline education. There is a vast difference. You may be able to impart the knowledge, the information, but there is something else beyond that. The entire warmth, the values, the exchange of emotions, I think that's what is missing between teachers between teachers and students. That's an overall shift that has happened, and it has happened so sudden. But I think everyone is really trying to cope up. We must give them the credit that, as far as teachers and students, there are a lot of students who are even, parents who are complaining of children getting frustrated at home. They are throwing tantrums. They can't deal with them because when they were out of the house, when they were in the institutions, schools or colleges, I think the peers used to take care of them, of each other. That is a big part which is really missing. That's really missing. It has its own impact. And especially with the absence of the physical togetherness, I think it's going to take a toll as the days are going to advance. It will have its impact. But at least to some extent, the online connect, to some extent, some percentage is at least helping. And I think that must continue. It must not stop at all.
So Shrutik and Evelyn, if I may, can we just focus our discussion a little bit on professional side? So when I say professional, that means on corporate world. That's what I meant. So Anisha, Mallory, and Rashi, you guys have your own colleagues when you are going to corporate. You guys are used to going to, let's say, Google or Oracle or Empowerly. How difficult it is now to work from home and do your job 100% in terms of efficiency? Is that any of the tasks which you really require face-to-face? So how is your efficiency in terms of the professional life? Anisha, you want to go first? You're on mute. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's an interesting comment or situation. In fact, I think working from home, you're actually working more. There's always that misconception that you work from home, you're potentially not working. But I found that when you're working from home, you're kind of more focused, less distractions, if you will. So you end up working more, and sort of the timeline bleeds between work and home, and you really have to regiment yourself to sort of break away. So honestly, and even across our organization, there's been comments made by CEO and others saying that, we're really working a lot more. At the same time, there are, situations where obviously, you can't just go to a colleague and say, hey, go through some queries and some information gathering, which is a little bit more difficult. But again, our organization, we're fortunate, and a lot of other organizations fortunate to have a lot of different tools that you can reach out. So it's definitely, it has a gap that people want, that meet people interaction, that, side coffee conversation and so on. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that's not a big issue. So technology sector or industries where you can do your work via technology is probably easier than some other organizations or companies or even smaller businesses that can't, do anything through technology. So that's where the more of an impact is, I guess. And I guess I consider myself fortunate from that viewpoint.
Yeah, I'll say that at Google, I think Google was one of the first large companies to have their employees work from home. And for me, to be honest, I'm an executive assistant in people development. My actual job was pretty easy to transition because I often work from home. Two of the executives I support are not even at the same campus as me, so I'm used to supporting them remote anyway. It was an adjustment with one of the executives that I support, but I didn't feel that much. For my team in people development, we had to change all of our programming. So we run all of the leadership and manager development trainings. And we had to really pivot and see what we were going to do very quickly because we had programs coming up. Are we going to go virtual? Are we going to cancel them? That was a big issue that kind of came up. Working from home for me like I said, I feel very fortunate. I live by myself right now. I don't have that many distractions. The hardest thing for me has honestly been exercising out of anything and like getting up from my desk. And I now tell myself that I need to dance between meetings. So I play my Whitney Houston and I dance and I just go crazy just to get myself moving. Because that's been the hardest part. Is I find that I'm like, I like to work. I end up working a lot too. And I feel as though a lot of people can fit in more meetings, or they think that they can because they don't have to commute. I didn't realize how much I miss commuting sometimes, because it's like I have an excuse not to be on my phone, not to be working. And so that's been, I think, really difficult. I'd say just a story in my family is my cousin and her fiance are in a completely different boat. My cousin works in retail. Her fiance works, I think he has some kind of job in finance, like trading of some sorts. And she had to give him her laptop because he's used to having 6 screens and he couldn't take those 6 screens home. So she's like, well, you know, Steven bought one extra one, but I'm letting him use mine for a little bit. And so we're finding that, like Anisha was saying, that, you know, technology companies like Google, Oracle, they're more equipped, but I am really concerned by most of my family is in small businesses. Most of them honestly did lose their jobs. And those are the ones that are not equipped with going remote and doing this kind of remote work environment and trying to figure out how can even I help and use my privilege and use what I have to kind of teach them. And if there's anything, I just want to say one thing to young people is really take this opportunity to learn and see what is going on in the ecosystem, and seeing, you know, if you want to go into a business so that you can kind of pandemic proof your business in the future. What happens again, if this happens again, really take the time to learn from your parents and seeing their jobs, what we're talking about, because you're so young. And I know we've kind of been focusing on the negative stuff, but there are some positives too. You guys are at a young age where you can adapt. You're seeing a lot of teachers. My parents are not very used to some technology, but you have time to learn those and constantly make yourself adaptable, resilience to change. And so I just want to encourage you that, yes, there's a lot of negative going on, but there is a lot of opportunity to learn and to build in the future.
Rashi?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would start with just saying my own experience has been, it was odd. Some of us started working more, and some people, I don't know if they started working less, but we don't really know what happened there. So we did actually I had to sit down with my team and have a talk about productivity working from home, especially when you have roommates or with your family and there's so many distractions. And that was the first step. One of my team members came up with a very good idea, which was we would all hop into a Zoom or Google Hangouts for an hour or two and just work, and we would all be there. So if we needed to ask questions, we could just ask on the call, but we didn't necessarily make it into a meeting. It was just like work together time remotely. And that helped a lot. I know a couple of my coworkers were going a little stir crazy, feeling lonely because they were either alone or they felt like very trapped with 1 or 2 family members or roommates. And so I definitely think that's a big thing, is that like it's hard to adjust. I also think we're very fortunate to be able to, for some of us who are with our family, to be able to spend time with our family, for people who are alone to be able to get some time alone, and really appreciate that. And that's kind of the takeaway I would definitely advise is I've been seeing this all over social media where people are like working on projects, like, oh, use this time to like do X, Y, Z and like make them, you know, like always be doing something with your time. But I actually think this is a good time for everyone, and including young people, to take a step back. And especially in school, you're always doing things all the time, and that doesn't need to be the case. And take it from me, I often lived my life in a way that I was running from place to place, but just taking that time to relax with your family or just with yourself, and do things like, I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but I tried meditating and it helps a lot. So just taking that time to be on your own and enjoy your time with yourself and with others is huge. You don't need to be doing something all the time. And I think that in that way, this is definitely a blessing where you do get the chance, kind of forced to be at home. So definitely enjoy that time. Take short walks with a mask on, but like, and, you know, go outside in limited quantities, but also like, yeah, exercise and watch TV, like allow yourself to do that, like allow yourself to write and read and all of that stuff, because it's fun and it's cathartic and you'll never get this time back.
You got 6 minutes, Evelyn and Shrutik. why don't we ask everyone the last word? What do you say? Yeah, final thoughts. Is that okay? Is that okay? Shrutik, why don't we start with you? Shrutik.
Yeah, so I think firstly, thank you all for showing up today. It's a privilege to understand all of your thoughts and all of your ideas and concerns concerning the pandemic. But I mean, I guess something that I've really enjoyed and that I've personally learned, not only as just a co-host, but like as a spectator of this very event, is just how themes of unity and humanity have really popped up throughout this discussion. I think although we all come from different walks of life, different places, different backgrounds, stuff like that, we all share that common struggle, and we all share that common will to just keep pushing. So I think generally the advice that Mallory and Rashi and everyone really just gave about how we can make use of this time in order to ensure that not only do we stay productive, but we allow ourselves to not only to just like kick back for a little bit, maybe like leave the rat race for a second, stuff like that. So I think generally we're all probably going to be in a good place when we're finished with this whole deal. But yeah.
Evelyn, you want to go next?
Yes, just reiterate what Shrutik just said. It's been an amazing opportunity to get to hear all these different perspectives. And I think my final note I'd love to hear maybe just how what's one thing everyone can do to kind of, keep our mental health together, just stay strong during these times. And I think for me, it's really been doing a hobby that I never give the appropriate time to because I don't prioritize it, but just drawing and doing what I want to do rather than what I have to do. So yeah, that will be my final thought. And I just really appreciate everyone weighing in and, humanity and resilience. That's what it comes down to.
Nyla? You want to go next, Nyla? What's your final thought?
My final thought, first of all, thank you to everyone for inviting me and listening to what I have to say and my perspective on everything. What I would say is to keep yourself sane and active right now to make sure to stay with communication with all your friends and family right now. I feel like they're gonna be the ones that really keep you sane right now. And since you can't see them physically, FaceTime, Zoom calls, Skype, just make sure to do those calls with them. And we're all going through this together. So it's just, stay connected.
Okay, Dr. Dedhia, what's your final words?
My final words are to look at this entire challenging period more as an opportunity to be with your family, your friends, connected online, offline with your family. And I think the skills that one wanted to otherwise learn, this is the best time that is open to us to gather more skills through online courses, maybe through a lot of reading. There is a lot of time for self-reflection, which was missing. We were on some kind of a routine life, which we had accepted. I think this pandemic has given us an opportunity for self-reflection,
Sure.
to do away with the things which were unwanted and to make things happen, which are really required. So I look at this as a great moment of opportunity and self-reflection. And I think there has to be positivity because life is the way we take it as. So this is the destiny right now and we have to accept it with whatever challenges that they are. That is my message to everyone.
Thanks. Chris?
Sanjeev, you have an amazing organization. Your leaders are thoughtful. They are preparing themselves to lead not only in their regions, but around the world. And as I sit here briefly and reflect, we met at Milpitas High School TEDx event. And prior to the event that we had met at, I was the speaker at last year, 2019, and I had done a TEDx where I met Mallory and learned about Learn What Matters, which is an amazing organization, and a number of things that were spoken about really the purpose behind high school, whereas there is the education piece, but Mallory's work is about, during that high school time, you get a chance to learn what matters. So I really hope that folks have some time to investigate the work that she's doing. I will add that at the TEDx that I did a 18-minute presentation, and it was called the Wake Up Tour. And one of the topics was the 80,000 hours that you're going to have in your career. And what are you going to do with those 80,000 hours? And it briefly also touches on some of the biggest challenges in the world. And one of those items on that list was health and pandemic possibilities. So Sanjeev, it's funny because I hear Mallory and Rashi talk about these young people, and I'm thinking, you're young people. So I like to leave you all with, I sent you an email with the link to the YouTube TEDx video called the Wake Up Tour. I highly encourage that you invest the 18 minutes in it and then reflect on it, because it's going to take you some places that you probably haven't thought about going yet, that's relative to this conversation now. And I do look forward to evangelizing your organization in the future as often as I possibly can, so that more folks can get involved. Thank you for your time.
Yep. Araav?
Yeah, so I can agree more with what everyone else said. I think this period of time is definitely a time for self-reflection. I think before this period, many people were moving too fast and they didn't know exactly what's going on around them. But definitely this time is a period for self-reflection, taking time to indulge in a new hobby or spend time with family and friends. I think this time will allow people to slow down and kind of reflect based on what they're doing and reflect their hobbies and maybe learn something new.
Okay, Anisha? You want to unmute?
Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you, Sanjeev, for inviting me to this program, and also all the team members who contributed. I learned a lot, and some great points. We talked about humanity and a lot of other things. So there's a lot of takeaways here. I think one of the things that we all, and this has been talked about by some of the other members as well, is just to take the time to reflect, take the time, give yourself permission to do the things that you couldn't do, take the time with your family, and also, maybe see what you wear and how you can contribute. Certainly these are words that I also will chew upon, and some of it, we're doing. And I think a lot of times teenagers especially, or younger adults, if you will, they're always running away from family. So now they're forced to do this and kind of figuring out how to make it fun and enjoy the time. So.
Rashi?
I also want to echo, I'm so honored to be a part of this group, and this has been an amazing opportunity, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Sanjeev. I think that the biggest thing I can take away is kind of what Christopher mentioned earlier, which is that at the end of the day, it seems negative, and it doesn't seem like things are going to get better anytime soon, but I know they will, first of all, so definitely be optimistic. But second of all, we are in this together, so definitely to remember that we are one team and one body, and we hear about fighting between party lines and racial lines and other lines on the news all the time, but it's up to us as the next generation to ensure that we are able to proceed and move forward from this pandemic with perhaps a new view, which is that we need to work together, not try to talk over each other all the time. And I would just say, take this time away from everyone to think about ways that you can work with other people. And that is the biggest thing I think that we can learn from this, is that we are one, and this is a unifying situation because we're all together fighting against a disease. And I think it's something that we can continue to learn from in the future. So definitely continue to work together in the future.
Mallory?
So I'll say, you know, like everyone, thank you so much for having me. I feel definitely honored. I'm going to be adding everyone on LinkedIn later, so be on the look, or social media. But I just want to say, I mean, also thank you to Chris for shouting out my work with Learn What Matters. And it kind of, the pandemic kind of set up my work perfectly, because all of the things that I teach with high school students is all about learning what matters in life, and that self-reflection and being very self-aware. And what I'll say is I really hope that young people take the time to find gratitude. No matter what situation you're in, I think that if you are breathing, there's something to be grateful for. For me, it's just having a safe place to be, even though I'm alone, away from my family, and I can't spend time with them. I'm just so grateful to have a place to live. And the other thing is, you know, it's so funny to me, all these high school students that I work with are constantly on their cell phone. Everyone wants to be on their phone. This is the first time that I'm hearing so many students talk about how much they miss in-person interactions. So what I would say is take this moment to realize your phone is great. It's a great tool. But at the same exact time, remember now what it's like to not have that in-person interaction. Next time that you're with people in person, are you going to spend so much time on your phone or wanting to be somewhere else? And so for me, it's just finding gratitude and really realizing your cell phone is great, but that in person, having those real conversations truly does matter. And to make sure that whenever we walk into that new normal, that you remember all the lessons that you learned from this experience for you to take you forward. And if you want to ever if you ever want to tune into Peace Over Panic, just add me on I Learn with Mal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have come to the end of the segment. I want to thank all of you, our co-host Evelyn, Shrutik, and then especially Aditi and Rachel. You guys can show up your video. We would love to have you on. And then all the guests coming down here speaking to us. This is the first time NGN has conducted this town hall, and I think it's a success, and it's a privilege to have all of you and listen to you on this sensitive issue, COVID-19. And I hope that when NGN conduct next series of NGN Town Hall, we'd love to invite you again. And thank you again, and stay safe. Take care.
One final thing, I really want to say thank you to Sanjeev for creating this platform and always giving us an opportunity for youth to voice their concerns, anything. It's always being supportive.
Thank you so much. Looking forward. That's what it is. Next generations. It's all about young generations. My role is here to listen. I don't know whether I spoke too much, but usually I would like to hide behind the curtain and listen. But thank you for you guys. Thank you, all of you guys, to allow me to speak here. And looking forward to work with all of you. Take care.